Welcome everyone to Politically High Tech with your host, Elias. I have a returning guest here. Yes, I am playing it just a little bit more safe, and I'm going to tell you why, because I want a certain tone to be set here. And new guests are not expected to pick everything up, and I am not this crazy person that expects everything to be perfect, but I also want to talk to people who, got a general idea or at least have some experience on this podcast. So we have a returning guest here. And the first time I interviewed this guest was in episode 234 that was released at August 24th, 2024. Okay? So he's a returning guest, Kirk Beck here, and he taught us the important lesson of the power of petition. Okay, I really recommend you check out that episode. I really do. I don't care where you politically lean. It's a right we have. It's nonpartisan. This right. The problem is, and I agree, is ignorance and apathy is what plagues. That makes this problem persist. But I'm not going to talk too much about that. You check that episode out about the details and all that about his experience and how you could have a more effective petition to the court. All right. But this one here, even though it might have some connection to it, he has an upcoming book. And before I get to that book, I want Kirk here to introduce himself again to anyone who is not aware of this podcast, anyone who's a first time listener. So, Kirk, what do you want the audience, the listeners, and the viewers, what do you want them to know about you before we get started?
Thank you, Elias, for having me back. I would begin by simply saying I'm an old guy. Been around for a long time. I've been an educator for over 40 years, and my passion in life has become a desire for Americans to understand what the American vision was and how we need to capture it, recapture it in our hearts to bring about liberty that so many people in the past have sacrificed so much for, and I'm afraid we've been squandering a lot of that. I wanted to leave something behind, a legacy, so to speak. I've been married for I'm 2 months short of 50 years of being married. I'm coming to the end. Anna Sewell wrote Black Beauty, and she saw the book become a bestseller, and 6 months later she died. I hope my book becomes a bestseller. She taught Brits how to love horses. In 1890, if you wanted to go from one place to another, you either walked or you had a horse. We can't relate to that now because we have 100 ways to get from A to B. But back then, it was the horse. But one thing all Americans should understand, don't need to know much about horses anymore, but we need to know about liberty and how to protect our rights. We can't afford to allow it to disappear in this country. There's no other country that can give to the world what we have the potential to give. I've seen broadcasts where people from different countries have said, God bless America, you're our only hope. Now that's an important concept and a tremendous responsibility for Americans. So I wanted to leave for my children and many, many hundreds, thousands of students that I've had through the years, something that will be timeless. And my book is Officer Hanson, Compassion in Blue, Finding Strength Through Virtue. I began this book by telling my son stories about a cop who was compassionate towards everyone. The reason why I did this because I saw in my son, he was prone towards high levels of masculinity. I mean, he wanted to fight. He wanted to be aggressive. And I was trying to convey to him the great reluctance that I've had towards violence my entire life. I was in the military for a while. Fortunately, I never got engaged in combat. But I saw a mentality in the military that I didn't like. I thought to myself, is this the way it always has to be? And then, of course, I came across the model of Switzerland. Well, Switzerland has a military, but it's totally defensive. And that's what I wanted to teach my son. It's okay to be masculine, but be defensive. Be compassionate. Use it as little as possible. And if possible, never lethally. And that's part of the premise of my book. Now, I would tell my son these stories, and my wife would say to you need to write a book. And I'm a very practical person. I didn't want to write a book that didn't have a lot of practicality to it. Are there really cops like this? And by providence, I was led to Dale Brown out in Detroit. And he came to California, and we brought him to Riverside, and I had him speak. But even though I went to local law enforcement, I could get no law enforcement people to come because they felt they had it all down pat. They were doing things the right way. Well, I tried to get them to watch Dale Brown's website where they could listen to 7 police officers from Detroit who all said the same thing, almost verbatim. Why were we not taught this way? Had we been taught this way, there would have been far less shootings and many less lawsuits against the city of Detroit. 5 men, all with at least 15 years of experience, were saying that the way they were trained was not adequate. So I flew to Detroit and I rode with Dale Brown for a day. And Dale Brown's a minority, African American. He would never say he's an African American. He's just a black American. And he taught me so much about minorities and about policing tactics. And I felt, my goodness sakes, I need to get a lot of this into my book. And by golly, I need to write the book. My wife's right. This book could change many lives. This book could save many lives. It's got exploits from actual cops, friends of mine. It's got stories from my own background. I've been involved in a lot of legal matters. I've been in the court a lot more than the average American, not because I hurt people, but because I'm prone to always want to defend liberty. It's just in my heart. Even when somebody else is going to court, I end up going with them, trying to give them encouragement to stand up for what is right. And when I go to court, I always learn something. I often say I learn law by doing law. I go and I'm respectful to the court, but at the same time, I recognize that the court is largely living in a different jurisdiction than the one I think we should be operating in. I know that when I was in your program back in August, I had not memorized this section from the Declaration of Independence. It's very short, one sentence. Jefferson writes, he, speaking of the king, has combined with others, speaking of Parliament and the colonial governors, he has combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution. The Declaration of Independence preceded the Constitution of the United States by 11 years. He wasn't talking about the United States Constitution. He was talking about English common law, common sense law. He has combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation. One of the things that I put in my book is that I recognize that bad laws are passed by legislators who never have to enforce them. Bad laws are adjudicated by judges who never have to enforce them. It's the police officer that has to enforce bad laws. It's the police officers that end up receiving even bullets from people who don't respect the law. Bastiat said in his classic work entitled The Law, that if the law is taken out of its proper boundaries, 2 bad things could happen to the people. One is that they lose all respect for the law, or number 2, they lose their understanding of right and wrong. They just don't understand right and wrong. My wife and I ran a crisis pregnancy center for 2.5 years, and we would show young ladies information about abortion. And more than once, a dozen times or less, we would have women that would come in and they say, but it's legal. If they understood what it was kind of like, but it's legal. It didn't make any sense that we would do that to a human being. They didn't understand the development of the baby sufficiently to be able to be shocked by what was going on. These are the kind of things that I try to bring out in the book, that true law enforcement should be reasonable and compassionate, and it should be constitutional. It should be along the lines of the jurisdiction of common decency, common law. Americans don't understand what common law is. They just think whatever they pass in the legislature is law. That's wrong. Only statutes that are constitutional are law. They are, however, legal. They're legal in the sense that you did not contest them. You accepted them. So they're things that you have to be aware of and you have to apply to. Me and people like me, basically, we look at law as common sense. I shouldn't be doing anything that hurts anybody. That means even when I'm traveling in my car, I wouldn't blast my radio out the window because people might not want to listen to Bach or Beethoven at high decibels. But Americans, especially young men, seem to be prone to driving down the road with their car all revved up, making more noise and almost as much noise as some motorcycles. They're not being compassionate towards their neighbors. So I'm trying to convey to people and to police officers would agree with me. 90% of the cops are decent people. 10% of the cops aren't decent people. They do things that are wrong. And Americans need to police the bad police. When we encounter them, we don't argue with them. We just take note of what they're doing, and then we use the power of paper to present to them a better way of doing things. So my book goes back to incorporate in the last 8 chapters the power of paper, because this is something that American people need to be able to do. We need to hold our government officials accountable. Elias, there's a few chapters in the book that I'd like to mention because I think they make the point very well. Chapter 29 is entitled The Thin Blue Line. This is an actual encounter that I had with a police officer in Washington, D.C. I was returning from Fort Belvoir at 5 p.m. I was coming home against the flow of traffic leaving Washington, D.C. I was looking at the traffic coming up the hill. And I thought, my gosh, this is how long am I going to be in this lane waiting for an opening? Because I just see a steady stream of cars coming up the hill. Well, I looked, and I must have been there maybe almost 2 minutes, and I finally saw an opening coming. So I did something I would never do again. I turned the wheels of my vehicle ready to move through as soon as the opening came. And just as soon as the opening came, some guy slammed into me from behind, knocked me through 2 lanes of traffic up onto the sidewalk. The timing was absolutely perfect. Had he been even a couple of seconds earlier, I would have been the front end of probably a great number of automobiles all piling up. It could have been one of the most serious accidents in the history of the United States. Okay, I find myself in the back seat of the patrol car. The patrolman gave me the police report. I read it and I said, look, I don't want to get this guy in trouble over here, but he's obviously been drinking and you didn't put that in the report. Yeah, let me have that back. So he put it in the report. I'm thinking, what kind of a police officer is this? How could you miss something so obvious? At my apartment, I read the report more carefully, and I found out that the man who struck me was a police officer. Off duty, drunk. Knocked me through 2 lanes of traffic and could have killed me. The police officer writing out the police report left it out because he didn't want to end the career of a fellow policeman. Now, I did a lot of thinking about this in my book. I took the essence of that encounter, but my hero is a ride-along. He's like a rookie, and the cop with 20 years of experience is the one who is not filling out the police report correctly. So now we're having a discussion between a cop who's doing the right thing and another cop who's trying to save his buddy. The discussion is very insightful. What the cop is saying is, if I write this up, I'm going to end his career, and that will become very well known to all the cops that I work with. And the unwritten law, the thin blue line, you don't rat on a fellow cop, especially when nobody is hurt. Well, I wasn't really hurt. Had I been killed, I'm sure he would have lost his job, and he probably would have gone to jail. But since nobody was hurt, the bad cop is saying, I'm not going to write the report up. I'm going to shield him from his potential removal from the police department. Well, my response to the police officer, my character, Officer Hanson's response is, if you don't do it, and later on, 2, 3, 5 years down the road, he does it again, and people this time die, and a good investigative attorney looks through all the records and comes across this. And 5 years from now, the guy sitting in the back seat who had his car rear-ended gets a phone call from an attorney, and that attorney finds out you shielded that cop from what should have been the end of his career. Now the police department is in huge trouble. You could be in trouble as well, and people are dead. This guy is going to lose his job. It doesn't mean you and I can't still be his friend. We can be helpful to him. We can try and get him to the next place in his life. We have a responsibility, I feel, that when we do what we have to do, we can still do what we should. And that's go back to the people and at least say you're going to pray for them, you care about them, you want to do something to help them. These are the kind of situations that I bring out in my book. And Elias, I also reference about a half dozen other books in my book, trying to get Americans to read really important books. One of the books, I should actually say more like a booklet, I have a chapter in my book called War is a Racket. There's an actual book out there written by, I believe he was a general, General Smedley Butler, the most decorated military person, certainly in the Marine Corps, up until the time of his death. So he went through World War I, highly decorated, and at the end of his career, he wrote the book War is a Racket. And one of the things that he said in the book, which I put into my book, is that war is the only enterprise where profits are calculated in dollars and liabilities are calculated in dead bodies. Profits in money, losses in dead bodies. What Smedley Butler says in the book, I try to convey in my book, is that war should be the absolute last thing that a country engages in, and it must be defensive only. You don't become the world's policeman. You take care of yourself. After all, as I spoke about earlier, Switzerland was able to stay out of 2 wars. Everybody's fighting around them, but nobody wants to go into Switzerland. Why didn't they want to go into Switzerland? Because the military in Switzerland trained the militia in every cannon. When my friend Scott went to Europe, I said, well, when you get to Switzerland, at least check on the militia. So he did. And he came back and he told me something very shocking. He said that one of the homes that he stayed at, there was a bazooka in the closet. A bazooka. Because that guy's job was a bazooka man. And they had monthly drill. And his job was to get to where he needed to be. And they trained constantly. We had people in Switzerland who were trained to blow up bridges. The Nazis knew it would be a bloodbath to go into Switzerland. You would be fighting people who are defending their homes. How much more willing is a person to defend his home than he is to go to another country and fight? Thoughts like these are intertwined in my book. That's War is a Racket. I have another chapter entitled The Battle for Haditha Dam. Elias, have you ever heard of Haditha Dam?
Absolutely not. Enlighten me.
I don't think 99.99% of Americans never heard of the Battle of Haditha Dam, but it's the only battle of the Iraqi war. We only had one battle the whole time. It lasted 7 or 8 days, and the war came to an end a few days later. Now, the Haditha Dam. Talk about the bitter, tragic irony of war. My hero is a mortar man with the Rangers. Part of my book, my hero goes through, actually it starts with my hero being in the 8th grade, all the way up to when he becomes a sheriff of the county. But he finds himself in Iraq as a Ranger platoon, and their job is to take over the Haditha Dam until the Marines can show up. The irony is that the Iraqis were told a lie, that the Americans want to blow up the dam, which will destroy the city, the city of Haditha below the dam. The Americans are told a lie. They're told that the Iraqis want to blow up the dam so that we won't have a means to move our tanks into northern Iraq. That only across the dam would be the only way that we could get our tanks across. So the Iraqis are going to blow it up. Both soldiers were told lies. Both soldiers were fighting to save the dam. The tragedy is accurate information, because I got it directly from documents. Over 300 Iraqis died defending their dam. only 3 Americans died by a suicide bomber. Apparently pregnant, came up to the dam in a truck, came out looking for help. Soldiers, being compassionate, put their lives at risk, and she blew herself up, killing 3 American soldiers. In that battle, over 50 tanks, Iraqi tanks, were destroyed because of American air superiority. They just drove in and we just blew them up. It's revealed that American platoon with high technology was superior to a much larger group of Iraqis, many of which were clad with tennis shoes. With infrared technology, we were killing Iraqis in the dead of night, and 300 of them died. Doing what? Defending their city from a foreign power. I put a lot of thought into my book. Some of my chapters took me several months to write, but I was trying to convey compassion to our enemy. The Iraqis had a very, very terrible leader named Saddam. We had a couple of leaders that, for whatever reason, did a lot of tragic things. Their names were Bush and Cheney. They told us that there were weapons of mass destruction there, which we could never find. And I have a quote from another book. I forgot Woodward. They wrote The Final Days. The book was about the final days of Richard Nixon. And in that book, Henry Kissinger, Secretary of State, turns to General Haig, Nixon's chief of staff, and says, quote, "Soldiers are stupid pawns, only good for foreign policy." That was the attitude of Henry Kissinger towards the soldiers that he was sending off to die, 50,000 of them in Vietnam, a senseless war. Lots of wonderful young men died, but hundreds of thousands of victims of Vietnamese descent also died. And we used Agent Orange to defoliate large sections of Vietnam. And the Vietnamese people suffered great sickness due to our spraying. But did we ever really hear about it? No. You hear about it in my book because I want to tell the story of what our military has done. At the same time, I try to bring out the great camaraderie and the patriotism of many of the grunts that were on the ground, the men who went off believing that their country was trying to do the right thing. In my book, my hero ends up having a wonderful friend from Korea. And this Korean gives the point of view of how blessed South Korea was by what the American soldiers did in order to save them from becoming communist. Probably didn't know this, Elias, because I didn't know it either. Over 50,000 South Koreans fought next to us in Vietnam. They were nearly the last troops to leave because it was their way of saying thank you to America for what we did in keeping them from being taken over by the communists. I just really like my book because I read chapters and I say, wow, there's so many great history lessons in this book. There's so much rich information for people to just get a touch of it. And then maybe they want to read Smedley's book. Or maybe they want to read Bernstein's book on the final days. Or maybe they want to read John Perkins' book entitled Confessions of an Economic Hitman, and what we have done to other countries in exploiting them, their resources by bribery and trickery, and how our banks take over other countries, not with force, but with paper, banknotes, loans that can't possibly be repaid. Kind of wealthy information comes to my book. 57 chapters, all the chapters about 1,500 words or less, just like Anna Sewell's book. Very short chapters, each one kind of like a standalone in the sense that there's something I'm trying to convey in the book. It's very important. I've got a lot to say about race relations. I quote from the book Up from Slavery by Booker T. Washington, and what a wonderful attitude he had towards racism and how he felt race obstacles put in his way and put in the way of the black man in the 1800s could be taken negatively, or we could use it to become better people. If we have to outperform white people in order to get what we want, gee whiz, that's a noble thing. If the obstacle makes us better, we'll embrace the obstacle and we'll find it as a positive effect on our lives, not a negative. Booker T. Washington did not preach victimhood. He preached diligence, hard work, and the fact that it doesn't make any difference what color you are, especially if you hold true to God, that you can be assured that he sees and he will reward. Okay, I've talked a long time. Got any questions for me?
Oh, I don't even know where to start. But there's a lot of profound stuff here, stuff I didn't learn. This is what history uncovered in a lot of ways, history that most people don't know anything about, including this host right here. And I like that you incorporate a lot of, I call it mini lessons that's trying to bring a major point. Well, we got to read the book to find out once it's released, of course. So that's not going to be answered. You're not getting any spoilers, okay? I respect other people's work. Even when I get the book, and I do plan to buy it, I'm going to read it at some point, and God willing, have him back. Then I'll spoil it maybe 1 or 2 years later. Maybe 1 or 2 years later, but not now. You're not getting it. Not in this episode. That I can guarantee. And trust me, he's keeping it close to his chest. I'm telling you that much. You gotta wait for the book to come out. We gotta be patient. Come on, we gotta be patient. No spoilers. No spoilers. Even if I find the answer, I might even give you the wrong answer. I might even lie to see. So, oh, he's talking about A. It could be an honest attempt or it could be a deceitful attempt. I don't know. Don't trust your host when it comes to this book. Only when it comes to this book. Everything else you can trust me in, but this book, I don't know. I might have an April Fool's attitude. You'll see. We'll see. I don't know. This could be all bluff too, but we'll see. But all seriousness, let's get to some of the questions that I like to ask. I like that. Let me just give some praises first. I like they put multiple history lessons in there. Race relations, I think, was a good part of it, and of course, obscure history that quite frankly most of us don't even know about unless you're a general or a history buff who digs deep even to obscure unpopular details that most commoners are just don't even realize that it existed. And let's start with the police one. I like the fact that you were trying to be proactive even though nobody got hurt when the car accident happened, right? The thing is, you expose the police culture that protects their own from consequences and accountability. I'm not saying not all police are bad. That's not what I'm trying to say. But that seems like that part has
Well,
been exposed. Yep, go ahead.
you have to understand that a police officer goes through something called post. That's police officer standard training. It could be 6 months, it could be 10 months. That's all they get. And then all of a sudden, they're cast into a situation where, now think about this, because I've had so much action with police officers regarding traffic. A police officer, I rode with a cop one time. This is a real decent cop, and he made 10 traffic stops. He gave 8 tickets. Now, when he gave a ticket, he was involved for about 10 minutes. Then he come back to the car. But on 2 occasions, he came back without writing a ticket. And I said, well, why didn't you give that person a ticket? And he said, well, I gave her a ticket last week and I didn't want to give her another one. Okay, but why didn't you give him a ticket? Oh, because he's in my karate class. And quite frankly, I didn't want to give him a ticket because they might beat the crap out of me when I go to, what? Wait a minute. Because you went to some class for 6 months or 10 months, you get to be the judge and jury of all these people who are out there traveling. And in California, you give somebody a ticket, it's going to be $240 or more. It's not Montana. I know a guy, his wife got a speeding trick ticket in Montana. It was $50, and when she was in and she was so gracious about it, the judge dropped it down to 25. Speeding tickets out here start at $400 or $500. And you have people out here, the standard of living cost of living is so high. You get some guy for $400 or $500, he might not have enough money to feed his family. But this guy who went to school for 6 to 10 months gets to make the decision on the street who gets a ticket and who doesn't get a ticket. And then you're thinking about, no, wait a minute, the person who's writing the ticket, the agency is going to get some of the money that he's writing the tickets for. I went to my assemblywoman one time and I took my friend Shelley with me. I said, the reason why I brought Shelley here is because she lost her husband due to a reckless action by an illegal migrant. Now, this was way before Biden opened up the border. The fact that she killed Shelley's husband by her negligent actions, and the court said she has to pay Shelley, I can't remember, it was $20 or $10 every month for the rest of her life. Well, that doesn't help Shelley. And the woman even stopped after 6 months. She didn't even do it. if we're going to give a ticket, why don't we put the majority of the money that goes in the ticket into an escrow fund that assists victims of negligent drivers? Then I wouldn't feel so bad about paying the ticket. But if the ticket just goes to the government's writing the ticket, now the government gets the ticket. Doesn't make sense to me. And we're putting these people out there who have never went to college. I'm saying you need to have to go to college. You need to have common sense, common decency, and compassion. We're sending these people out there and we're teaching them, hey, you're the authority out there. You have the right to stop somebody because you don't like their color. You can give them a ticket. I tell minorities, you guys need to know the power of paper more than I do because they'll stop you just because of your color. They're not going to stop me, not in California anyway, I don't know, maybe in Nigeria, but in America, I'm a white guy. They're not going to stop me because of my color. But that's the kind of stuff that goes on. I went to an FBI meeting here in Riverside, and I heard a cop actually say that he was out in his front yard. He's a black guy. He's just doing some work in his yard. Patrol car comes by and then comes back and then comes back, comes out and they say, what are you doing in the neighborhood? I'm looking at the weeds here in my yard. You live here? Yeah. I don't know how it escalates, but the next thing is he's on the sidewalk with face down, 100-degree temperature, and he's calling to his wife, get my wallet. She brings the wallet down, and there it is. He's an LAPD officer. Okay, well, their whole attitude changes now. But why were they profiling him in the first place? Yeah, why? A couple of cops, both racist, in the car together, decided they were going to have some fun with this guy. This is in Riverside, California. This isn't in Alabama. This is California. We're supposed to be so progressive out here. Well, that's a story that I heard in my hometown from a black cop. Those kind of things happen all the time. Now, fortunately, the majority of the cops never would do anything so stupid. But we have to protect ourselves from the bad cops. And those bad cops needed to turn in their badges or get some kind of a desk job for the next 6 months until they learn how to behave. I'd like to know what kind of training they're getting. See, in my book, my police officer has a job in Chicago, and he eventually is wanting to get out of there. He's looking for a city, a county where the Constitution and common sense reign supreme. And he finds one in my fictional city of Carter, where the police chief requires everybody have hours of constitutional training every year. It's just part of the training. And where you're told, if you ever shield scandal, you're done. And my door is always open. And if you see scandal, you better walk in here and tell me where it is because sooner or later I'm going to find out and you'll be gone too. So that's where my hero ends up. And by the way, one of the things that Dale Brown taught me, he runs a security agency in Detroit as well as training police officers. But every one of his security people have 1 hour of martial arts training every day. And what Dale Brown taught me was this. When you know 10 ways to disarm somebody with a club or a knife, you are not the least bit intimidated or afraid of what they're going to do to you. You would not have to take out a gun in order to put the odds in your favor. As somebody who knows how to disarm somebody with a gun or with a knife or a club, or just a big guy. You look like a pretty big guy to me, Elias. I don't know how tall you are, but you look stocky. You look like somebody who could run me over pretty well. I know, but you're a compassionate, nice guy. But, you have somebody like the guy, I forgot the guy in St. Louis area who was coming at a police officer and the police officer ended up shooting him. Hey, if the police officer knew martial arts, the guy's coming at you with a club or guns or just because he's big, Dale Brown's wife is trained in martial arts. You don't want to mess with Dale Brown's wife. You might end up with a collarbone broken because what's not going to happen is they're not going to take out a gun and shoot you. You see, in many police districts, the attitude is the standard operating mandate. What's the word I'm looking for? It's our philosophy. Our philosophy is make sure you get home safely tonight. In Carter, it's make sure everybody else gets home safely tonight. Your job, if necessary, is to lay down your life. Now, we follow proper protocols. You're not going to have to lay down your life, but you have to be at least willing to do it. Otherwise, you're in the wrong business. Go sell flowers. Go be a school teacher. Those are admirable vocations. But if you want to be a military, you want to be in the military, you have to be willing to die. If you want to be a police officer, even a fireman, you have to be willing to die. Out here in California, we lose firefighters. All too many of them. They all go out there with the idea, I'm willing to die. And that's what police officers are. They should be trained to do. And that means, here's one of these are really profound thoughts that Dale Brown shared with me. He said, Kirk, let's say a guy's coming at you with a club. No, he would pose this question to police officers. A guy's coming at you with a knife. What are you going to do? Well, most cops would say, I'm going to stop him. How are you going to stop him? Well, I'll take out my gun and shoot him. I'll warn him, but if he keeps coming, he's going to get shot. Dale Brown's response, does it matter to you who that person is? Well, the cop's thinking, oh, it's a minority. No, I'm still going to shoot. Or it's a woman. No, I'm still going to shoot. Dale Brown's response is, what if it's your own son? Now think about that. Would any cop, if his son was coming at him with a knife, wouldn't he try to figure out 10 different ways to not have to kill him? But the guy coming at you with a knife is somebody else's son, is somebody else's father or husband. Why do you treat him differently than you treat your own son? And every time I pose that to a police officer, they don't have any response to it. No. And here's the other one. I posed this to a supposed Christian police officer. I said to him, you're walking down the street, and across the street there are two men mugging a woman. What are you going to do? He said, based upon what I now know about the law, I'd just keep walking. Really? Let me tell you what the common law says. That woman over there is your mother. Now what are you going to do? Oh, well, that changes everything. Well, that's a common law. You treat everybody like he's your brother, your sister, your mother. When we lost that, the situation, I don't know all the specifics, but certainly when we had that situation up in Minneapolis where the police officer had his foot on the guy's neck, I'm sure there were a few people who said, hey, you shouldn't be doing that. I wonder how many of them think now, I should have done something. I could have saved that guy's life. Yeah, you're taking a risk. But if we had a common law, common decency philosophy of life, we wouldn't have to worry about how you might get arrested and thrown in jail for trying to help somebody because you do the right thing. In my book, I quote Davy Crockett. Davy Crockett said, find out what's right, do it, don't sweat the consequences. And he went to the Alamo.
I mean, oof, you provide even more, a little more profound value. Let's just limit that just a little bit. Yeah, but I think sadly the reason why things are falling apart, you already exposed it right there, is that people, when it comes to their own family or friends, they'll do things differently. If they see him as just some random person, they just gonna do the worst thing. They gonna assume the worst case scenario and just react accordingly. Which you're explaining things in the. This may seem little to some of you, but this is how society breaks down. This is happening on. You could times that by 10, 100, well, a million. Okay, this is why society is decaying. You already said common decency that's eroded. People just caring about their own skin, or if they're a little slightly more compassionate, family and friend skin, right? And then that's where it ends. Everybody else, just a stranger, a hostile, whatever other label, or the minority enemy
What if
because of
we
skin color.
learned to hold them accountable? Hold
Yeah.
the police officer accountable. Hold the city council accountable. Hold the supervisors accountable. Hold people accountable. That's why I haven't been able to have the opportunity yet, but I would love to go to the National Association Advancement of Colored People. Those people need to know the law more than I do. Because once you understand the law, you recognize, hey, I don't need to fear. I'll give you an example of this. A lot of Muslims, I was talking to a guy who was from the Near East, and he said something that baffled me. He said, because I look like a Muslim, I go through security checks a lot easier than you do. Wait a minute. I'm a white guy. You look like a Muslim, and you're telling me you get to go through the security checks faster than me? Yeah, you got to explain that to me. He said, well, hey, what the Muslims do, they've been told that if you think you're being profiled, you get the badge number, you get the officer's name, and you submit it to us, and we'll take care of that. We're going to stop this profiling. Wow. So because they know the law, they get better treatment than I do. Well, what if everybody knew the law? Why are you profiling anybody? I was listening to a guy one time on talk radio. He was a police officer. Not anymore, but he said he wanted to get moved to a different part of town because if he got to the other part of town, because of the minorities that lived there, he could write, when he wrote a ticket, he had a greater likelihood of finding a warrant. He could get more arrests over there. Now, wait a minute. You mean to tell me for a while in your career you were looking for a place where you could make more arrests? That was your standard operational procedure, was to go to a place where you could arrest more people. Yeah, because that's how I got advancement. This needs to stop. And in a lot of cities, it has stopped. There's a lot of great police departments across the country, and not all like that. But I guarantee you, if the police department is more than 10 people, you probably got some things going on in there that could be a lot better. And all I'm trying to say is the more Americans who know how to use the law properly, effectively, firmly, with common sense and common decency, the better off we're all going to be.
I agree. And I have preached this before on the podcast. This is even before you start coming in. I said, you need to know the law.
Yeah.
I think some of the, and me, I had a more modest approach because I'm not sure how effective it is. But talking to you, I'm going to double down, triple down on that. So just mention occasionally. Maybe if a lot of us know the law, we could hold the bad officers, and I separate the police department from the bad officers. We could hold the bad officers to account or have them fired or lose their jobs.
Right.
And society will get better. Society will get better. I've said that before. I'm going to preach it again. I'm going to double down on it. Know the law. Know how to talk to the officer. Don't panic. Don't act crazy. Sadly, you give these, the unqualified officers who are a little psychotic and ill their excuse and their green and their pass, okay, to commit brutality. Like I said, I think a lot of officers are respectable. They're great people, and we just be clear about that. But we have to hold, just like he said, bad officers. That's not all officers. Only bad officers accountable. He phrases it real carefully. So if you take him out of context, you're disingenuous. You're not a good person. That's what I have to say about that.
Amen. Let me give you
And
I want to give you one last picture of a good cop.
go ahead.
Good cop. Now, the good cop's name is Pete. He's an actual person. This is what he did. He's a sergeant. He's got supervision over some patrolmen. He gets a call. We got a guy who won't get out of his car. We're going to bust him out. And he said, I'm only a minute or two away. Don't touch him. I'll take care of it. He goes up to the situation. He tells, you guys just stand over there. Let me go talk to him. He knocks on the window. He says, look, what's the problem here? I want to know what I can do to help you. And the guy says, I just want a minute to be able to talk to my sister and tell her I'm not going to be able to pick you up. He had a warrant. He knows when they get his driver's license, he's going downtown. So he just wants a minute to call his sister. These guys are going to bust in their window. Pete says, take some time. Let me get you water. He goes back to his car, lets him roll down the window, gives him water. He says, oh, it's 104 degrees out here. Have some water. And I'm going to go over there and talk to those officers. When you get done, you go ahead and get out of the car. The guy makes his phone call. Within 3 minutes, he's out of his car with his hands up on the top of the hood of his car. And the whole thing, one of the things Pete said to him, look, you're going to get arrested here. But if we break in the windows, it's going to cost you $1,000 on top of it. I'll take care of your car. Believe me, I'll make sure it goes to the right place and we'll be able to get it out for you. But you got to go in. Just give you 5 minutes to think about it. His patience allowed the situation to de-escalate. And the guy was very thankful and his attitude towards cops got better. Those cops wanted to break in the window. Not necessary.
Yep, you said one of the key words, de-escalate. De-escalate is a very key word that should be emphasized so even mentioned more often. A lot of these situations, I would say probably 90% of them could have been cooled down. And
Right.
and let's use alternative reality dimension, whatever word you want to use. Maybe that massive BLM global protests, riots, let's speak, some of them were violent riots, will not spread across the world. It wasn't for that inappropriate police action of Derek Chauvin and the three other officers. So, and and this is why race relations, especially regarding police and law institutions, have not been great. Not so let's just keep that in mind. I'm not saying every person of that race should get a pass with her, but it is good to know the law. And look, I don't like to bring the whole race identity thing, but look, Kirk was not even treated the best because the Muslim proved to the cop that he knew the law backwards and forwards, and he got better treatment. So, is the skin color in some cases? Yes, but if you know the law more, and me says I study some of the law, I'm a minority. I got relatively good experience with a police officer, maybe except one or two interactions that were not great. But for the most part, I had pretty good interaction with the police officer because I'm calm, I respond, I look at them, I answer the question.
Yes.
That's what needs to be done. Because if I was doing, cursing them out, pulling out a gun and a knife, things would have got heated and it would be an ugly sight. Okay. This is why I say it's important how you talk to officers. It's sad you gotta have that conversation with the kids, especially if you're in a crime infested neighborhood. You have to talk to the kids how you deal with an officer and how you talk to them because that's very important. That's very, very important. I cannot emphasize that enough. And it's sad that a lot of young people die because they don't know how to talk to an officer. And and remember that power of paper, petition, petition, petition. All right, that's what you're missing. And then I'm sure you're gonna have a fight. It's gonna be a bit inconvenient, but it's worth it.
Education
All
is
right.
liberating.
Yep.
Education is liberating.
Exactly.
You recognize you have remedy. You don't have to put
Yep.
up with this stuff.
Exactly. You don't have to put up with this because you deserve better.
Yeah.
And there is a practical answer here. Okay. I don't care you left, right, black, white, rainbow, whatever. There's a practical answer here. Okay. That's all I'm gonna say. Just to be honest, I could easily stretch this for another hour because there's just so much good stuff. But Kirk and I have better things to do. So before I wrap this up, let's show that book again. Show that lovely book cover. I'm going to describe it to those who are just listening to the audio. It's a thick cover book. Has a It has blue font, stencil style. Okay, kind of like military and police equipment. Officer Hanson in blue font, and then in the subtitles, and this is written in white fonts. Compassion in blue, finding strength through virtue. Of course, the author is Mr. Kirk Beck here. It has a picture of an officer. The head is not shown, but it does have the police uniform, short sleeve, light blue short sleeve, police uniform shirt, and of course the dark blue pants that goes with it. All right, that's all the description I'm going to give you for the audio listeners, so you don't have to be left out. For those of you watching, you just saw the book cover for the second time. So once it comes out, sign up for his waiting list so you can know when it comes out. He's holding it pretty close to his chest. That's his style. Just respect it. It's going to come out. It's a matter of when, not if. Okay, because
Yes.
it's done. All right. It's already done and published right from our eyes. Okay. So
So
if you want to message him, yeah, go ahead.
give them the let's give them the website
Sure.
affidavitsecrets.com.
Yep. You beat me to it. That was the next thing I was going to say. Go to affidavitsecrets.com.
And
Sign up.
I'm trying to
You
remember
sign up for the
when
waiting list so you can know when the book gets out. And anything else you want to add?
I remember I was on your show last time. I had a link, it was affidavitsecrets.com, and let's see
They will
where
slash politically.
politically, yeah, slash
Yeah.
politically, and that then we'll know where you came from. But one way or the other, you go to affidavitsecrets.com and you can get on the waiting list, and it gives you chapter summaries. Every other day, you get a chapter summary, so you know what the book's about, chapter by chapter.
Yep, you heard it. And he's not a super commercial kind of guy. And now I'm going to do my portion of the shameless plug-in, which is more lengthier than his for sure. But get that book. That book is really important. That part I'm serious about. Just get that. I signed up for the waiting list already. So I encourage you to do the same. You, my fellow listeners and viewers, just get the book. It will teach you. It'll be life changing. Okay, and I could guarantee if you decide to put the effort and implement it. Don't just read it and treat it like it's any other book, like you read, fairy tales and things like that. This is a practical book. This can change your life. This is based on reality. This is not, James the Giant Peach kind of fictional nonsense and fantasy. Okay. So get that book. So now for my plugin. Like, share, subscribe, leave a comment. And if you want to leave a review, go to Apple Podcasts and leave a review. I want an honest review. And if I can improve, just say when I could improve, be specific and clear about that. And that's all I'm going to say. So once you have completed this audio journey or visual journey, have a blessed day.